This panel is going to get you re-energized because we have beneficiaries and people who understand pension funds, which is a slightly different category of investment than we've had before. And we're going to hear some of the ups and downs of how investment funds invest here and what some of the experiences are in Hawaii about attempting to do ESG. And we have some really wonderful people to help us with that. I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting down at the far end. But they're going to introduce themselves, and they're going to talk about one thing they've either learned while they've been here, or one thing that they want to follow up on and want to learn more about since coming here. So please start.
Okay, my name is Tamara Paltin, and I worked with the County of Maui in the Ocean Safety Section for about 17 years. I was a lieutenant at D.T. Fleming's Beach Park at Honokahua Bay, and then last year I became a council member. So I'm a kind of a beneficiary. I used to be a union steward for Unit 14, and before that Unit 3, when we were still together with the clerks. One thing that I learned today that I kind of want to follow up on is, you know, I live on the west side, deep west, Napili, and learning that the rental cars might be transitioning to EV and knowing about that high ruck road use charge situation. I kind of wanted to follow up on it. You know, if we're not going to be fixing roads with gas surcharge, and we had a kind of a big discussion on the council about electric vehicles and how much they pay, so I definitely want to follow up on that.
Okay.
Aloha. I am Inez Okamura, a beneficiary, a retired teacher, coordinator, and principal. Came back to Maui about 12 years ago, and I've been really busy working with community affairs. One of the things that I learned this morning, although I kind of knew, I have no idea about investment, financial management, any of the stuff you guys spoke about this morning. I'm not dumb, but this is a huge area where I'm not too swift at. So I beg your indulgence today.
Aloha. My name's Kaleo Waia. I'm originally from the Big Island, but since we started our family, when we moved here, most of my kids and their kids consider Maui their island right now. I originally got my bachelor's in Washington State, got my first master's in California, and when I returned to the islands, served as a pastor for the United Church of Christ here. Since then, I've chosen to go bivocational as a way of taking the responsibility for my own family upon my own shoulders instead of putting it on the shoulders of the congregants. So I currently pastor a local church here on Maui. I started teaching at Lahaina Luna. Currently, I teach at Maui High School. And I was working this morning there, and Maui High is doing really well. So, your turn.
Thank you. Aloha, everyone. I'm Michael Kramer. I'm here from Kona, where I've lived the past 20 years. And this is my 30th anniversary since I've been with Natural Investments, which surprises me because I don't look that old, I know. But it's true. The very first $1,000 I ever saved, I gave to my company that I now own when I was 22. So I spent the first 10 years as an investor and the last 20 as a financial advisor. and now one of its owners. And we manage over $1 billion exclusively dedicated to sustainable, responsible, and impact investing for people and institutions nationwide. We have offices everywhere, including right here on Maui. James Frazier is our advisor owner who's based upcountry here. And one of the things that I wanted to follow up on from this morning is this idea that you can make money and make a difference simultaneously, because I think sometimes what gets lost is this idea that you have to compromise return in order to do good. And there has always, as long as I've been in this space, been this mythology that you can't do both, or that you have to sacrifice. If you're going to narrow what you're doing and be mission-oriented, you're going to sacrifice financial return. That has proven through research over the past 25 years to not be true. And that mythology is still out there, this idea that, you know, if you start making decisions based on social and environmental criteria, you're going to be causing financial harm or underperformance. That is a mythology that has been debunked. And if there is a takeaway from today, that another takeaway, that is one I wanted to make sure got mentioned, because there's plenty of ways to generate return, and you can make an incredible positive social and environmental impact and make plenty of money at the same time without any conflict.
I'm David Okamoto, so I'm with the Hawaii ERS. So I'm part of the investment team that oversees the investment portfolio there. In terms of something that's kind of piqued my interest, I think we had a really good lunch discussion with Michael from the Illinois State Treasurer, kind of some of the things that they've been doing kind of in their state, kind of the act they passed over there.
I want to stick with you for a minute, David, and ask you to, since you work for a large pension fund in the islands, could you talk a little bit about what a pension fund does and how its approach to investing might be a little different than what we heard this morning?
Okay. I guess in a very basic way, you could kind of think about there's kind of three parts to a pension. So there's contributions, which come from the employees. So kind of, for example, 8% of my paycheck, 8% of every one of my paychecks kind of goes into the ERS trust fund. So it's invested. That's where kind of myself and the rest of the team comes into it. And then on the back end, then are obviously the monthly checks that we send out to beneficiaries. In the sense of how it might be different from, say, I guess if we come think about that chart that was kind of put up earlier about that continuum, there are people on that very far end where it's kind of mission driven. They don't have to care about returns. For us, we do, because we do have to generate a certain amount of return to make sure that we can kind of make those pensions that have been promised to beneficiaries. So what that means is we are certainly investing kind of with a long time horizon, but we do have kind of higher say kind of return targets.
I just want to clarify something, because you did say three elements, and you talked about the employee contribution. What is the employer contribution here?
Yeah, so I guess it's contributions, investment, and I guess the benefit.
Okay, so the one thing I was going to try and clarify, that some of the money comes from the employees, and then some comes from the employer.
The employer,
and how much is that?
I believe the percentage is higher than what the employer puts in.
But then, so if it's 20% collectively, the other 80%, you and your team are responsible for delivering.
Well, right. I mean, because for one, you can invest in it, and then obviously there's a time difference, right, between the time that the money is contributed and the time that it's eventually kind of paid out. So right, you're not having to fund kind of the full 100% all up front.
Right. So I didn't want to be too didactic there, but that's how pension funds operate. And for those of you who haven't played with them, it's an important element to understand about how they're structured. So, and I really want each of the panelists here to be able to talk a little bit about, you are a member of a pension fund because it helps you to have a different kind of life as you get towards the end of your ability to work. And most of us refer to that as retirement. Other people may think of it in different terms. But the next question I really wanted everyone to answer was, what is your vision of retirement? Because I think it informs how you want your fund to operate. And I don't care which, if you want to start, I'm sure you have one too, and we'll go down the line.
Sure. I guess I'm pretty far away from retirement, but if I think about, so my parents, who are actually both kind of worked for the state, so they're actually beneficiaries of kind of ERS. So if I think of, what I want, say, their retirement to look like, I think probably the word that comes to mind is kind of security, I would say, is probably the biggest kind of theme or word.
Okay.
Yeah, I concur with your definition, and will add that in this volatile, ambiguous reality, that security, that financial security has to be completely intertwined and dependent on the health and well-being of society and the environment.
When I was supposed to start my vision of retirement, I was playing. Sorry, I was playing. And as it got closer and closer, yes, I developed a vision for retirement, and that was to travel and go places. And security was really not a biggie in my mind.
So my vision, I guess I'm in retirement kind of, because I retired from my career, but it's not fun. My vision for retirement was, I wanted to go to the beach and not have to rescue people and just go in the water when I felt like it. But realistically, I was a non-contributory member, so if I had worked my full 25 years, I would have gotten a very little bit amount back, because when I signed up, they gave us the option if you wanted to be contributory or non-contributory, and I didn't really trust the system, and we were getting paid really little bit, and the cost of living on Maui was high. So about like 10 years in, they offered us the opportunity for the hybrid plan, but I didn't take it. I just figured, I'll work when I need to get more money, and didn't think too much about it. I'm not concerned, because I figure I got a lot of skills and I could always get a different job.
So I want to follow up with you a little bit on that, because you told me a slightly different version of the story last night. And I'd like to at least open up that discussion with you. You talked about engaging in a struggle over an investment, and what you said to me at that point was your vision of retirement was in part to be able to paddle where you paddle. Would you tell us that story?
Yeah, you mean there was a project by the ERS in my community, the Ka'anapali Revitalization Project, and this was going on right when I was running for office, the year leading up to it. And I guess, I think AMFAC or someone had borrowed a couple $100 million or $100 million of dollars from the pension, and they couldn't pay it back. And so they got this land in Ka'anapali instead. And it was like the golf course and things like that. And the golf course wasn't making the money, I guess, that it used to make. It's like golfing over the past few years, a lot of courses have shut down. And so there were the idea of building more hotels and building some affordable houses and like that didn't really go over well in my community. And the first meeting that we went to about it was at the Kaunoa Senior Center, and a few of us went in, and it was all these people in aloha shirts. And coming from the beach, usually guys in aloha shirts are developers. But it was actually people from the hotels, people that owned the condos, and it was kind of, I guess it was like not in my backyard people. And I thought like, you know, oh no, these guys want to develop Kaanapali, and then come to find out they were actually on the same side as the community. You know, they didn't want it in their backyard either. And I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it, like, oh, I'm on the same side as these guys. And then I went home, I told my husband, and he's all like, oh, no need worry then. You know, they got it. They're gonna take care of it. But it kept going, like even though that whole room of Kaunoa Senior Center, everybody didn't want it. They said, you know, traffic, we don't want more hotels, the sewage and whatnot. The project kind of kept going forward, and until like even our community plan advisory committee discussions, a lot of people came out and they're like, we don't want this Kaanapali revitalization. And the county planners are like, whoa, we're not here about that. We want to talk about the whole area, not just one project. And then they're like, oh, you're on their side, that's why. And it's kind of like disintegrated. But I got a chance, I was flying out of Honolulu, and I happened to be on the same flight as Tom Williams, who is like the executive director of the ERS. And I ended up inviting him into our community and facilitating a meeting between the community and him. And everybody pretty much spoke out against it. There wasn't anyone for this project. And a lot of the people that were speaking out against it were beneficiaries. We had like retired firefighters that paddle. We had public works workers, teachers, and everyone's like, I'm a beneficiary, but I don't want this project. You know, my retirement plan is to go down to the beach. That was my retirement plan.
Yes.
Too. And you know, each hotel that comes up, they push us down and kick us out. We have Napili Canoe Club, used to paddle out of Napili, but there's all hotels around Napili Bay. You can't launch out of there. Kahana Canoe Club used to be out of Kahana, but all the sand went out and there's all hotels there. That was, Hanaka'o is kind of the last place where all the canoe clubs on the west side are. And a lot of the generational families from the area, you know, they've seen all these hotels go up. They've seen all the promises of affordable housing, and all the affordable housing just flips over to market value, and nobody can afford the affordable anyway. So it was like, you know, really we didn't want this project. And a core group of us started to negotiate with their consultant, and some people were really upset that they were even still paying a consultant, but we started to negotiate with them. And we got to a point where we had this plan that we kind of felt comfortable bringing to the community, like it was sort of a compromise. And then come to find out the board was all like, we're just gonna sell the land, you know. And then I was talking to Jen, I don't know if she's still here, the biologist, and she had a plan for one of the areas that is owned by the state pension, and they were gonna do this like drainage basin. And she said, oh, well, they're selling the land, so that plan, we can't go forward with that. And you know, in some ways we're happy that they're not moving forward with their revitalization plan, but who's gonna be the one that buys it, and what are they gonna do? Because to some extent, we know the ERS, and a lot of us were beneficiaries, but we don't know who they'll sell it to and what they're gonna do. So it's just, maybe it's not the end of the fight, it's another fight, you know. And so, I don't know, do you want more?
No, that's
Okay.
wherever you've finished. I was just going to follow up over here with David. How does ERS normally engage in this kind of community dialogue around these kinds of investments?
I mean, so I guess something like Kaanapali is fairly unique. Kind of a lot of the investments that we have, you know, they're not these kind of direct real estate holdings kind of in Hawaii. So I mean, I guess to the extent that, you know, I think it's good that, you know, that Tom came out and, you know, kind of did that type of kind of a community outreach, kind of hear kind of everyone's concerns. But I think, you know, again, given that that is kind of that type of a pretty unique kind of situation, I think, you know, something like that, you know, I think we're kind of always would be kind of open to, you know, kind of hearing things. But
I guess too, you know, being that AMFAC, or they weren't paid back the money, one of my colleagues on the council always says that, you know, Maui has the highest bond rating, and we even turn down state revolving funds because we can get better interest rates and things like that. So you know, I guess we wonder sometimes why they don't invest in county projects. You know, with the high bond ratings, they'll get paid back, and it may be improvements that benefit our local communities. I'm not super on bonds and things like that, but you know, being that they didn't get paid back from the AMFAC investment, I would trust the county more than AMFAC or hotels and things like that.
So, Michael, I was just wondering if you, from having worked on trying to do ESG investments, have some, you know, something you could add to this. You know, how could this process be better? How could the community stay engaged, and, you know, whatever ideas you have.
Yeah, it's sort of a two-way street, because there's the work of the beneficiaries and them creating a cohesive voice and asking to be a voice at the table as beneficiaries, to be able to talk about what they care about, and in the hopes that that would be of interest. You know, many investment professionals kind of just do it themselves, and they don't reach out. I've often thought that it would be very wonderful for the ERS to do a survey that would go out to all the beneficiaries, asking what are the values? We've been talking about Ahupua values all day. Why couldn't that be put out? Like, how could we shape an investment social policy? And asking for input, I think, is a very wise strategy to create buy-in from the people that you're serving. So it is something that I've actually recommended to the trustees of the ERS, because they invited me to come and talk to them a couple of years ago. And I still think that would be a good idea. But this is also part of the process, which is getting the beneficiaries and the people who are affected, who live in the communities that are affected by any outside investment, to be able to articulate the values that you stand for, and how investment measures up against that or not.
So, Kaleo, you were talking last night about generational values and how beneficiaries have to wrestle with that concept. Yeah. And if you could share some of that, I think it's appropriate here.
Boy. Okay.
I know it's hard. He's a deep filler on this.
Okay. So like 35 years ago, my oldest brother called my other brothers together. We all met over at Hilo to talk about how we were going to take care of my mother when she retires and everything. So we work out all the deals, and for me at that time, all I had was educational debt to offer, you know, in terms of take. Oh, by the way, I still have educational debt. Okay. Before I went to college, my plan was to make a lot of money. Family went through really tough times growing up. Father died when I was 3. He was a breadwinner. We were scrapping. We were kind of farmed out to different family members. One of my brothers had to learn to walk and talk again. Then we were reunited, so we were kind of living in that survival mode for a good 12 years. Made the decision, I never want to be poor again, never want to be there. Then just before I went to college, how does my profs put it? I had a paradigm change. Things turned differently, changed my focus to sociology, psychology, ended up becoming a pastor for the church. We were talking about 5 years ago, I got my family together, and we were gonna have this talk, and one of my kids comes up to me, "Hey, Dad, I love you, but I'm not gonna take care of you when you get old." It's okay. It was okay. And one of the others said, "No, Dad, I'll take care of you." I said, "Hey, it's okay. It's okay." But the point that comes out of it is that the reality, when I look at my pension, I'm looking at, I've got to take care of my kids. I've got to take care of My oldest brother was a banker. He inherited the family house on the Big Island in Hilo. I went into ministry. I never thought, nobody thought you would ever get a house. You're going to be working poor, and your brother's going to have to pray for you. But we have a house large enough to take care of all the kids and their kids. And when we need to make space, we make space. So when I think of pension fund, I'm kind of thinking about my family. And I could get more into it. I mean, I probably could tell more of it. But like you, I'm very values-based, you know. The whole idea, you know, when I was from the time I was a little kid and seeing all my older cousins leave to go to college and leave to go to mainland, see all this massive brain drain, you know, some of the best, smartest guys in my family, you know, girls leaving, and a lot of them just not returning. It just doesn't work. So when I think a pension, you know, what can be done so that, you know, it can return, so we don't have this massive brain drain from the state over and over, and so we don't have to bring all these people from New York. Nothing against people from New York or Chicago or anything.
Otherwise, I'd have to leave right now.
Yeah. To take those positions that we could very easily fill ourselves, and then our families could move out from there. So.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. And Inez, you too had some of that when you talked to me about your family and what you want your pension to be able to do. But you also have, I think, a very important story to tell about how you've worked with your union, or how your union has worked with you over the years to help you understand things a little better. And so any of that you want to talk about, we'd like to hear.
Working with the union. We had a CTA union in San Jose, just for our school district. And so they responded, you know, whenever we had a problem, they protected us, etc. When I became, let me back up. I taught for 37 years before I retired. I was a classroom teacher, I was a coordinator of federal projects, and I was a principal when I finally left. And the reason I left was, and I could have gone on and stayed, but the reason I left was I was a caregiver for my dad. So every day, during the daytime, I had a caregiver for him. But I remember days when I ran home, when I came home, I was driving about 75 miles each way. And when I came home, I was taking off my suit as I ran down the hallway to change clothes to cook dinner for him. And I had this awakening where I realized I wasn't doing a good job at my job, and I wasn't doing a good job at caregiving for my dad, not good enough to satisfy me. And so I started the process of looking at retirement, and that was hard to accept, but I had to do that. And I relied upon CalPERS, which was our investment, our retirement people. And really, they took care of me. They really took care of me. And I'll be forever grateful to CalPERS, because how many of you are making the same amount of money today and you know that you're going to be making that for a long time? Not you hope, you don't, but it's the other way around. With me, my first paycheck as a classroom teacher was for $1,800. My beneficiary present, because today is the present day, because we got paid today. Woohoo!
Praise the Lord.
Yes, praise the Lord. But I'll tell you that the money I receive in benefits completely outweighed that first year teacher's pay. It continues to grow. And for someone who is, disabled with things relating to math and investments and all of, it's not true, Japanese people are not good at numbers. Okay, so I bumbled along until I hit the point where, I am unable to express my appreciation and gratitude to CalPERS, and knowing how responsive they are to what's happening in my community, in other communities and districts. They come out, they do workshops. They send us a quarterly newsletter that keeps us up to date on how much money they have, and also where they're going, where they're looking at other places in the world and in the States for areas to respond and support, like the California wildfires of 2018 and 2019. They're looking at things environmentally as well as globally to form coalitions. I love that. I totally love that. Thank you.
So I want to follow up on that last statement with everybody else, because what you articulated was that even though you're really happy that you're getting a good financial return on your money,
Yes.
you want that money used
Yes.
to address other values other than just the dollar.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so it would be good as a sort of concluding effort to hear everybody talk a little bit about their approach to environmental and other values, and how that should be considered by your pension funds. So why don't we start down here? Maybe it's not best to start with you, because you probably have an institutional position you have to, but if you want, as a beneficiary, to talk about it. Step back from your institutional position.
Well, I guess I can talk a little bit about what what we are doing with ESG. So, we do have a responsible investing policy as part of our broader investment policy statement. Kind of under that, there are things like, so we do our own proxy voting, so that allows us for common stocks that we hold, does allow us to have some influence kind of over those companies. We have a Sudan divestment policy to make sure that we don't do, we're not holding or supporting any companies that have done business with Sudan. There's an anti-terrorism policy actually in there, kind of along the same lines, where it's we're screening through the portfolio, making sure that we're not having any direct holdings of companies that might be linked or supporting terrorism. Kind of within ESG, some of the things that we're doing. Actually, we've actually seen a lot of our the managers that we work with. The consultants that we work with have actually started to kind of create their own ESG policies, starting to look at things kind of through that lens. And I think I'd say, kind of when we think about it, I think sometimes when you think of kind of ESG, you just think of like, oh, well, we're gonna have to sell everything and only invest in wind farms or something like that. I don't think that's, that's true, that, a lot of these things do have, a measurable financial impact. And if you're not kind of looking at these things, you're not really kind of taking a full look at an investment. There's been kind of a lot of examples kind of thrown out today. I think another one would be kind of a couple years ago. So Volkswagen, right? It was cheating on their emissions. They get caught, and it had a very big financial impact. So, I think integrating ESG kind of into, the investment process, it is something that we are starting to see the industry starting to kind of catch on, and it's something that, it's still kind of an ongoing thing. kind of at ERS, the board's kind of more formalizing, their policies and, still working on it. But, there are some things that we are kind of doing right now.
That's wonderful, and I think that's a good beginning, and there's a long way to go. And I want to encourage the ERS to continue down the path to address a wider variety of issues that people care about, and there are plenty of people in this room and elsewhere who can help. And one of the things that also some endowments have done is, based on what I've heard today about the sincere interest in local investing, is they have carved out a % or 2 of their corpus to invest locally, and that could be in bonds, in municipal bonds or general obligation bonds. It could be in private equity. It could be in a wide variety of things. And I think that we've been hearing a lot today about how important it is to invest locally, to create the economy from within, to substitute for imports, to retain and cultivate jobs that are culturally relevant and based on taking care of the INA. So my hope is that lots of institutional investors, not just the ERS, can really do that type of investing, even if it's just a piece and of the larger portfolio.
I guess I don't want it, the whole idea of the kind of investment we're trying to advance here. It may be something new for maybe the ERS to consider. But the church has been doing it forever. The United Church of Christ has been doing social investments since I entered the pastorhood. And they've been very successful at it. I mean, the amount of money that was put into my account by itself is just huge. So it's not like you're kind of walking on water and just hoping that you'll get a good return. I'm going to do well with this. And it's not just the United Church of Christ. I think the United Methodist Church and a number of other, And I think taking a stand on values-oriented is really worth considering. And I made the push for family, the Ohana, it's taking care of it. And I'm sure you have a lot of classmates that probably would have loved to be in a position where they could be here at home with you, carrying on. But they just maybe couldn't find, the opportunity to stay in the islands and do what they do best. So, okay, I'll stop.
Thank you. Inez, do you have another comment?
No, I didn't really have another comment.
Okay. And Tamara, you get the last word. We are at the end of our time.
Okay. Well, now I'm a contributor. I pay like about 10% of my check to my retirement fund, and I think it's really important, like how Inez gets paid. Like we all have to pay our bills, but I really would hope that pension funds invest in the community, because even if not everybody is a state employee or a government worker, the investment in the community affects all of us, because we all live here, and if you see a rise in crime or a rise in pollution, it affects everybody, whether they're a beneficiary or not. So I think, most people that live here, beneficiaries and not beneficiaries, want to have a safe, clean place to live. And so that kind of investment, and I don't know, I know it's hard, and I know that our ERS is good, because Mr. Tom Williams, he was a good guy when he came. just shut us out. He listened to us, and he did say that they have parameters which they can follow, but there's things that needs to be done. But I think, you know, adding another, like a weighted system that investing in this community that the beneficiaries are going to retire in is just as valuable as the money that they get out of it, if not more, because, you know, if you have a money in a community where you can't even go outside or you can't talk to your neighbor, then it's just money. It's not any kind of quality of life.
Thank you. Very well said. And thanks to all the panelists.